one thing that's flying faster than anything else is time. We are well into 2026 and we are just zipping along and looking back a quarter of a century of this century that has just absolutely flown past. And that, if you think of it, is quite a landmark. A quarter century of motoring. And that's what we're going to be talking on this edition of Deep Drive, powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
And I'm Sergius Barretto. And yes, absolutely, almost 25 years, time does fly. And on a personal note, it's also 25 years of me working, because I began my first job in the year 2000, actually, or rather end of 99 and starting of 2000. So yeah, time does fly.
I don't want to say when I started working. Well into the earlier century.
Correct.
Yeah, but time does fly. And if you look at it, the what you call the 21st century,
Right.
and 25 years of that already gone. So a quarter century of a century.
Of a sense.
So really that is, quite a kind of a milestone which we passed. And I think, Sergius, it's a good time to look back, 2000 to 2025.
Right.
So much has changed.
It has, Hormazd. In fact, so much has changed. You're absolutely right. Let's look at the passenger car size itself, just the sheer numbers. I think we had, 7 lakh units sold, total.
Yeah, that's right. 700,000 units in 2000 and 4.5 million now. But I mean, if you look at it in 2025, end of 2025, 4.5 million units, of course, a big growth. But if you look at it, other countries like China, in terms of sheer growth and percentage, have just shot ahead.
Right.
So, obviously we have grown, and but then from a small base, you wouldn't expect to grow. So I think, but it's more than just the number, the entire structure of the market. That's what we're going to be talking about. It has shifted dramatically. Some things have changed, some things haven't. Leading in 2000 was Maruti. Leading in 2025 is Maruti. That hasn't changed.
The car has changed. It was the 800 back then. Now it's a Desire. But yes, the manufacturer still Maruti at the top.
That's right. And, I think I was just looking at some stats. In the year 2000, the Maruti sold double of the next car. I think about 140,000 units. The next was the Santro, 65,000 units. And I think at that time, we were very much hatchback, affordable hatchback country. The cheapest car was the most popular car or the best-selling car, straight off.
Exactly.
I think, that's how it was. The pyramid was like that. It was absolutely,
Right.
let's say the base was widest at the bottom.
Right.
And but it's changed now rapidly. If you look at it, right now, cars like the Alto, which is the success of the Maruti, absolutely struggling. Who would have imagined that 25 years later?
Exactly, absolutely. It's such a nice thing to see that our largest selling car is a sedan, which is quite also.
And and I think you've had cars like the Nexon also, which is right up there in the top 5. In 1 month they sold 22,000 units. So clearly, you've got let's say other body styles also. And while we say the Desire emerged as the best selling car, to be honest, a lot of that must have been fleet sales.
It has, for sure.
So, we don't have that breakup, but in absolute numbers, yes. But I still think from the private owner, it would be an SUV like the Nexon, which probably sold the most.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, Hormazd SUVs, I think this 25 years, one thing we've seen also is the rise of the SUV, the body style. Now, I know a lot of viewers keep reminding everyone, saying that it's got to be a ladder frame, it's got to have 4x4. But today, when we say SUV, we mean the body style. And the body style outsold hatchbacks in 2022.
Right. Yeah.
SUVs outsold hatchbacks in 22. So today, if it's a car you want, it's an SUV that you want.
Yeah. So, going back to 2000, what were the SUVs then? I mean, we had the Tata Safari. Which was there.
The Sierra was
the Sierra, I think, was still being sold. Yes, but I think the Safari was really the wow.
Right.
From Tata Motors. That was there, launched in 98, 99.
Right.
So clearly, the Safari was the best-selling SUV then, the top dog at the start of the century. And we still have a Safari now, not quite the same Safari as it was. So they've kept the name going. Still quite, I would say, popular, but really not the most popular as it was then. At that time, it was very, very different.
Right.
And I think then we had the Scorpio coming
coming in.
So I think Sergius, we had the Scorpio, we had the Bolero.
Right.
Really, it was between Tata and Mahindra, just kind of catering to the SUV market. Again, very crude in certain ways because they were body on frame.
Right.
But I think the real change came, and I think when the SUV market took off, it started with the Duster.
Yeah.
The first
The
monocoque
monocoques.
SUV.
Yeah.
And then you had the Creta, and then since we've never looked back. And then we've had compact SUVs. There the Ford EcoSport, which really set the compact SUV market on fire.
Right.
And today, compact SUV, super crowded. So I think really interesting to see how the SUV has evolved and has become the body style, which I think is just, gaining momentum and doesn't seem to be slowing down at all at the expense of all other body styles, especially hatchbacks. I mean, who would have thought that, the cheapest car, the Alto, would be struggling, and really all cars in that bracket would be struggling today.
True, absolutely. Hormazd, hatchbacks. In fact, there's an interesting little data point here which I have to share with you, and a little bit of a quiz. Last year, there was only one hatchback launched. You know which one was that?
Which one was that?
The Golf, the GTI.
So really, my God.
What I mean is all new
That's
hatchback.
right.
So
that was a CBU.
yeah, exactly.
Import, limited number.
Yeah, everyone's doing micro SUVs or pseudo SUVs. No one's doing a traditional hatchback. It was just
That's
one.
right. I think a lot of hatchbacks have kind of morphed into pseudo SUVs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they are. And a lot of people, let's say the grandstanders on social media say you can't call them have SUVs. They're actually just hatchbacks on stilts. But it's the body style, as you say, and that is really what is getting popular. So I think clearly we've seen the emergence of the SUV. No one thought that. And I think really it's a body style, which globally I think is, finding more acceptance. I think the reasons are why we've talked about them before: high ground clearance, good for our roads, high seating position, and fantastic road presence.
Exactly.
And I think all of them drive just like as easy to drive as a hatchback now, which wasn't the case earlier. They were heavy, they were crude,
Didn't corner at all.
Didn't corner at all. They were quite a handful. And I think that's all changed with the monocoque construction for SUVs.
Yeah, absolutely, Hormazd. And, talking about driving conditions influencing body styles, that's one thing that, it has changed, yet hasn't changed. Yes, we've got better roads. We've got more, highways in terms of kilometers laid out. In fact, 25 years ago, 2000 or 2001 was when the Mumbai-Pune Expressway first opened.
It opened in 2000.
2000.
Yeah, I remember we inaugurated it.
Right.
It was unbelievable. It was surreal, because at that time we were all used to, sometimes we had a 24-hour jam on the old Mumbai-Pune road. One bus broke down and that was it. It wasn't really two-lane. There was a one-way section.
Right.
So really when the expressway came with all those tunnels and just cutting through, the kind of Western Ghats, and you had that bit of a Lonavala section, which now again has become very crowded, and you need to have another underpass going through it.
For that, yeah.
That's really the pace or the volume of traffic has increased dramatically. But it was fantastic. And I think, that period, 2000, I think, was actually a great time for enthusiasts, I would say, because you had the roads coming. I think, at that time, Vajpayee's government really focused on the roads. The Golden Quadrilateral came at that point. So we had just some phenomenal roads and not so much traffic.
Yeah.
So I think doing Mumbai-Pune, you hardly had any traffic. There were no cameras.
Right.
Everyone could max out their cars at that time. At that time, showing a speedo, going completely over wasn't seen as uncool. Today, of course, you can't do it because on social media, you'll have 200 people, just nitpicking and pouncing on you for doing that. And it is, to be honest, very dangerous and should be avoided. So I think, and generally the roads were, to be honest, better surface then. I think what I've seen right now, and even look at where we live in Mumbai, you've got new roads coming, but the surfacing is just terrible.
Right.
And I think that again is lending to, let's say, SUVs. It's cars with low ground clearance, low tire profiles, just find it difficult to operate here. I mean, you drive from either Mumbai to Mahabaleshwar, Mumbai to Pune, the road surface is appalling, absolutely appalling. It's better in other states, but I think clearly, as we say, that road conditions generally very bad. I think it really kind of goes back to, having this kind of a chap of being a third world country when you see the roads and the conditions of them, when in smaller countries the roads are so much better. So that's one thing I'm disappointed in, that the network has increased, but just the quality, the surfacing, the engineering of the roads is absolutely pathetic still.
That's true, Hormazd. In fact, and the other sad bit about this is also fuel consumption, which is very often overlooked. Actually, in a nation where we're so obsessed with it, smoother roads would just lead to much better fuel efficiency. No jams, no slowing down for potholes, accelerating back again. There have been so many studies on this. There are tons and tons and tons of fuel burnt every time, every day, on every single road. Every car comes to a halt, accelerates, halt, accelerates. And fuel prices. I mean, it's only been going up. I think I have.
Total fuel price in 2000?
2000, yeah, I have the data here somewhere. I think the average fuel price was somewhere around 25 rupees for petrol and 14 for diesel. So, yeah, I mean,
today it's 106 and 90, I think.
Exactly.
So the percentage, the delta has also been,
True.
The gap.
Plus, efficiency also has kind of dropped a little bit with, let's say, ethanol now.
Ethanol and even on diesel, just, to be honest, sometimes to meet emission regulations, just to make the cars cleaner, they kind of end up losing their efficiency. No, that's interesting. In fact, I thought, we should talk about the evolution of the powertrain also. So let's say both petrol and diesel.
Right.
I think 2000, in 2001, really, we saw 2000 actually, because 2000 came BS2.
Right.
At that point was BS2 in 2000. And with that came fuel injection for petrol. In fact, BS2 effectively killed the carburetor.
Yeah.
Because, that you needed a closed loop system, lambda sensor to kind of meet the emission regulations. It had to be very, very precise. And that could only be achieved with fuel injection.
Funnily, though, it also brought in performance at that time.
Exactly. Right. That was a byproduct, actually. And frankly, it unlocked performance to a different level. I mean, even a Maruti 800 with a 4-valve engine, I remember, the speedo would go round the clock. I mean, we've talked about this before. That's quite an iconic shot of that speedo just going, past
the max.
Past the max, yeah, exactly. So I think fuel injection was one of really, let's say, a big development or a big leap in the first half of that, or that first bit of the quarter century which we are talking about. And I think, but as you said, we've seen it kind of, let's say, peak with BS6. I think things started getting tougher and tougher, and with 6.2 they started getting even tougher. And we've seen that, lot of after treatment, they've strangled engines. Calibration has been very difficult. People have had to err on the side of fuel efficiency. Cars have got heavier, so automatically they consume more fuel. So manufacturers had to dial back calibration. So you lose performance, you lose responsiveness. And honestly, it goes back to the Ford Icon, which was one of my all-time favorite cars. That absolutely razor sharp throttle response. From just a single fuel injection,
Right.
That row cam engine, a single cam engine. It was phenomenal. Cars were light at that point. They were not really, saddled with heavy emission equipment or safety features. They were super light, super cheap and super efficient. I think that was really the heyday, the golden age. So I think, talking about the quarter century, I think what we need to acknowledge is that the golden age of motoring is gone.
Right.
It was started at the start of the century, and I think it probably went on till about BS6. And after that, I think, with these tougher regulations, cars are no longer as much fun to drive. And we don't even have that choice, because there was a lot of culling of some really great products that were killed with the regulations.
Yeah, absolutely, Hormazd. And I think it's the same story with diesel, where you had common rail direct injection coming in. Earlier, we had, indirect injection diesels.
And non-turbos.
Non-turbos.
They sounded like tractors.
True. Or DI, direct injection. But now you've got the CRDI. And I think that kind of revolutionized the diesel.
Absolutely, yeah. Common rail was, I think, one of those, landmark technologies in the history of motoring, because it totally revolutionized diesel engines and the way they were. I mean, completely amazing the way it transformed the whole perception of diesel, performance, efficiency, refinement, everything. And I think by 2005, when we went to BS3, everyone had to switch to common rail. So what's interesting is that some of the regulations actually made the cars more fun to drive.
Right.
Like BS2 for petrol, it went to fuel injection, and BS3, everyone moved to common rail. They were moving faster and faster to common rail. And I think that was the golden age of diesel. I think, let's say, from 2005 to 2020.
Right.
You had some fabulous diesels.
Right.
Because 2020, you had BS6. Then I think a lot of diesels were killed at that point.
So,
and really, BS6 diesels, they even lost that mid-range punch.
Right.
Diesels today are much more linear.
Right.
That diesel, I think, was characterized. Remember the Volkswagen TDIs, which again went off in 2020, and of course with diesel they had that solid mid-range punch. There was a bit of turbo lag, and then suddenly rush of power. So, today, with the way diesels are calibrated, largely because of emissions, you can't have these spikes because they have an impact on the emissions. They have to be more linear in their power delivery to meet the emission norm. So even the fun of driving a diesel is not as much as it was. Of course, they're more refined right now. And honestly, I drove this. We had our GLS 450D long-termer. Absolutely brilliant, super smooth. But it felt like a petrol, to be honest. It was refined. Acceleration was linear. And it even guzzled like a petrol because, again, diesels are not as efficient as they used to be because of all the emission technology. You've got SCR, you've got a urea tank, you've got DPFs, all that, which are really strangling the diesel. So again, diesel, very interesting, a lovely rise with, let's say BS3, the common rail, the advent of the common rail, and then once BS6 came and BS 6.2, I think it's killed a lot of diesels.
So yeah, absolutely, Hormazd. Diesel has declined, but I think in these past 25 years, we've also got to talk about EVs because, interestingly, the start of the 2000s saw the Reva, India's first, not actually first electric car. I think there was the Lovebird, which was kind of the...
Yeah, but I don't think that was really for, it wasn't kind of in the market. It wasn't launched. It wasn't properly homologated.
Right. Yeah. So the Reva came in 2001. And frankly, unfortunately, nothing actually happened until 2020, you could say, when India's first modern EV, the Nexon EV, came about.
Right? Absolutely. So, you're right, because I think that was quite a gap. I mean, the Reva soldiered on. Right. They did these E2Os and things like that to kind of, let's say...
Yeah, Mahindra bought out the company.
Frankly, Mahindra didn't do much with it.
Yeah.
They could have done a lot more. They had, in fact, if you say, an edge in the EV race because no one else had anything.
Yes.
But then Tata came and just went ahead of them with the Nexon. I think the Nexon EV really was the game changer and immediately revolutionized the EV market. And you have to thank the Nexon for really, let's say, putting EVs into the minds of consumers. And today, I don't think a day goes by when you don't see a green number plate.
Absolutely. A day doesn't go by when I think we don't, or a week doesn't go by when we don't drive some EV or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, we've got, and market share, I think last calendar, we should be at around 4%, which is...
Yeah, 4 to 5%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think really the rise of the EV, the last 5 years of this quarter century, and of course going forward. So I think that's something no one expected as well. And really to see how companies have also evolved over these 25 years. I think a lot of them now, going into the EV race. But having said that, one company which theoretically still isn't in the market is Maruti, if you look at it.
Yes. we still don't have a price.
It's 2025 and they still haven't officially launched their EV.
26, you mean?
Well, what I meant is till 25.
Till 25, right.
Till 2025. We're talking about a quarter of a century. So the first quarter century, they've not launched an EV. They will launch it in 2026.
Yes,
but, and again, talking about Maruti, because I think, you can't not talk about a market leader which has had such phenomenal dominance. Right. And it's really played to its strengths, that formula of affordable, reliable motoring. They just know exactly, to give the mass what they want. But again, when you're a market leader, you don't really innovate or go into let's say, be the first to kind of go into a new technology.
Right.
And I think they haven't done that. Though I would have to say it was Maruti which democratized automatics.
Right.
With the AMP.
Absolutely. Maybe even hybrids, I would think, right?
That's right. You're absolutely right. Even with hybrids, they did. Of course, the hybrid penetration hasn't grown that much and they will push on hybrids. But yes, along with Toyota, they were really the first to bring that strong hybrid. Of course, we saw it in, let's say, niche cars like the Civic and all before that.
Correct.
And even the Prius, which Toyota.
But they kind of really popularized it.
I mean, it was really the first mass market hybrid. But I think for me, AMT was something the Celerio came in with when it was launched. I think today, Sergius automatics, I think certain segments, 60-70% are automatics in the higher segments. And I think overall, we are still a good, I think 20-odd% penetration if you take everything.
Right. Absolutely. Automatics is also something I think that has changed a lot in these 25 years because we didn't have automatics at all, if I'm not... Sorry.
Yeah, we had a Zen 3-speed. But again, it's nothing like the automatics we have today.
Yeah.
They're so much more sophisticated. Even the AMTs have evolved so much, which was quite interesting because AMTs were seen as a kind of a done technology in Europe, which we got back, single clutch, semi-automated manual, actually, that's what it is. But at the end of the day, when customers didn't know any better, they were kind of lapping it up because their left foot was completely freed. And I think that's where Maruti really, kind of scored over there. But otherwise, Maruti generally has been, never been a leader in adopting newer technologies as a rule, or even body styles. They've been slow with SUVs as well.
Right.
But again, I think, hats off to them for really keeping their kind of, let's say, dominant position for 25 years.
So, yeah, absolutely, Hormazd. While you're right, Maruti has, retained their sort of number one tier. But we have to also talk about the Indian car maker, the rise of the Indian car maker in the last 25 years. I mean, you look at Mahindra and Tata Motors, they have risen from nowhere to be market leaders in various segments. They were on the back foot completely in terms of tech, in terms of finesse, quality, every kind of metric. But if you look at it today, I mean, look at the Mahindra, any of their product offerings, whether it's the Thar, whether it's an XUV 700, the electrics, same with the Tata. We've got the Tata Sierra, we've got the Tata Punch, completely different from what these cars were.
No, you're right, and I think you have to give it to companies like Tata and Mahindra. But in the same way, I will say that, to be honest, competition was much more intense earlier, when it wasn't such a challenging market, or there weren't such high barriers to entry. A lot of people could come in a lot easier. Now it's a lot more difficult to crack this market, to enter this market in the mass segment. All kinds of things, regulations, distribution network, pricing as well. So right now, Tata and Mahindra are, to be honest, enjoying a market where there's not too much competition.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting away with quality which isn't world-class. Let's be honest. They don't have world-class quality right now. But it's still appealing to, the Indian, let's say, buyer, because, they're being dazzled with all the technology that they're given. But having said that, I think if you see the rise of these companies, I mean, let's say the start of 2000, Tata Motors, it was on its way with the Indica. Again, the IndyCar didn't have a great start.
Mm-hmm.
In 2001, it was really in bad shape. And at that point, even Tata were thinking of hiving off the passenger car division. I know Ratan Tata had meetings with GM, in Hong Kong. Fritz Anderson at that point, and I know of that, thinking whether they'd be interested in taking it off them. Mahindra too were not too sure of whether the Scorpio would fly. So Ford was always there to take it over. In fact, Ford had shown interest in this to do it as part of their joint venture, but Mahindra said no. And, both have never looked back. So clearly, I think it's shown that they've had a certain resilience. And, let's say, as you said, in the past couple of years, they've really raised their game, no doubt, as well, kind of bridging that gap.
Right.
I still think in terms of quality, there is a gap, but they've really bridged the gap.
Yeah, they've come really close.
And given much more in other areas, whether in terms of features, whether in terms of design, whether it's just in terms of what the consumer wants, they've kind of addressed that better than others have. But I think one company I want to talk about really is Mahindra. I mean, if you look at it, in 2000, Mahindra's vehicles were so crude that not one of them had independent front suspension. Just imagine that. You know, let's say a front beam axle or a dead axle, you know, really crude.
Right.
And then you had the Bolero, which came in 2001, which was the first Mahindra with independent suspension. Tata had done this much earlier. In fact, Tata had done it in 1988 with the 207 Tata Mobile and the Sierra after that. They all had front independent suspension, but Mahindra didn't. And look where Mahindra is today. I would arguably say Mahindra is ahead of the curve in terms of technology compared to the two. So they've really zoomed. And I think in these 25 years, I think the company that's accelerated the most in terms of technology more than even Maruti, because Maruti kind of had the 800 wonder car with everything, monocoque, synchro mesh gears, disc brakes, everything, which none of these companies really had at that point. So I think that way, I would hand it to Mahindra for being the one company that, in terms of technology, has really, let's say, grown the
most.
Yeah,
absolutely, Hormazd. And what you said, they've really given sort of the Indian buyer what the Indian buyer wants. And I think one thing they read correctly is actually this shift in safety. Indian consumers didn't care a damn about safety. I mean, back then in 2000, I know when I started my career, people didn't care about rear seat belts. The left side rear view mirror wasn't there. If you could reduce the price by knocking out a few things, they were really happy about that. But today, if you look at it, the scene has completely changed. I think when GNCAP started these crash tests back in 2014, it kind of opened people's eyes to,
absolutely,
oh God, okay, that's the kind of impact that could happen. And I think Mahindra and Tata really read that right. And both, just went down this path of safety.
Yeah, they made it a differentiator. It was, they used it in a marketing kind of way, and honestly, we've talked about it. We don't think GNCAP is the final kind of, let's say, benchmark or the be-all of safety. There are so many other things as well. But it is the only kind of reference point where comparisons can be made.
Exactly.
So, when you have that, obviously, you're going to compare one with the other. So it is very important, but it's not everything. But it is something which I think you have to hand it to GNCAP for really raising the awareness of safety, and even for these brands then to kind of really push their 5-star ratings. But in a way, what it's done is it's overshadowed the evolution of the safety regulations in India. Because don't forget, until 2017, we had absolutely no standard at all. Cars were genuine death traps.
Right.
Cars like the Omni, even the Nano to a certain extent, they were genuine death traps, 800. But when the new safety regulations came in, all these cars had to go because we started now conforming to the UN's regulation. That's a global standard.
Right.
Now, of course, GNCAP is higher than that. But, from nothing to go to the UN regulation, that was also a fantastic step. And by 2019, all cars had to meet that regulation. And that's why we saw the death of a lot of these cars which didn't make it. Omni, for example, otherwise it would have gone on and on. So I think, absolutely, I think in these 25 years, the advent of safety has been, I think, something quite remarkable.
Hormazd, it's also interesting that you did mention the fact that Tata and Mahindra don't have competition as much. And that's also because of the fact that we've lost a couple of brands in these 25 years. In fact, I'd made a list down here. And if I look at it, we'll start with Deven, which went in, 2002. Then you had Opel, the GM's brand, and then Chevrolet soon after that. And GM, of course, exited India. Fiat India also finally wound down. You had Premier Automobiles actually, which kind of struggled a little bit here and there, trying a little odd things here.
They try to come back with that, the Rio.
With the Rio,
That's right, yeah.
So they were there around. Datsun, we lost that brand. Nissan revived it and then only killed it. And then, of course, Ford India. I think that was another big one that we lost as recent as 2021. So we have lost a lot of brands. And I have to ask you this, from these brands, which is the one you miss the most?
Oh, without a doubt, Ford.
Ford, right?
Yeah. I mean, Ford is a great company with great products, with great people.
Right.
And I think I really miss Ford because I think the cars they made were just absolute delights to drive. Fundamentally, their engineering was solid. I mean, take any car. You take the Icon. You take the Fiesta, which they launched. You take the Figo. even though the Figo was, let's say, their most affordable car. You take the EcoSport. I mean, EcoSport was absolutely brilliant. You take the Mondio, totally unreliable, but when it ran, it just drove like a dream. The handling was phenomenal. And Ford was all about ride and handling. They got that absolutely spot on.
Right.
Steering, ride, suspension, absolutely fantastic. So really, as an enthusiast, one really misses Ford and wish they come back.
And I think, Hormazd, I really miss GM for nostalgia, of course, because I started my career, my first job, as it's not an internship, but, first job with GM, with Opel. So I do miss that brand, but also because, they did have potential. I wouldn't say they brought in the right products because, we had this poster, which was great men, great machines. And I would keep thinking great mistakes too, because they somehow kept making these, very fundamental errors with everything. But there was potential there, especially GM as a group. They had multiple brands, access to various technologies. You had, of course, they brought in Chevrolet, the brand Chevrolet, into India. It's a different matter. We never really had the American Chevrolet here. So I do miss that, just for the fact that there was potential there and never ever actually fully exploited.
Yeah.
Right. So Hormazd, also let's look back at these last 25 years at the cars we loved the most. And why don't you go first? Which is the one top, if you could just pick one?
I think for me, it has to be the Ford Icon 1.6. It was an incredible car. The price, the size, practicality as well. It was a stretched Fiesta with a boot, made to a low cost.
Right.
And clearly, I don't think it had much safety. But that Rocam engine was an absolute jewel. And it kind of proved that, an engine designed right doesn't have to have the bells and whistles. It was a single cam, 2-valve head, whilst Hyundai had come with the Accent 4-valve head and all that. But they didn't know what to do with it. And clearly the Ford was so much better, so responsive. Right. Steering was wonderful and an amazing car to drive. What about you, Sergius?
For me, Hormazd, I think it would be, a Type perhaps, but Fiat. The Punto and, the Palio, because the engines weren't great, admittedly, but because I know you like engines, but the suspension, the ride and handling, just top class. The way they handled high-speed stability, it had this big car feel.
But even the engines had a lot of character.
They had character, yes. I mean, to the point where I had the 90 horsepower Punto, the 1.3 liter.
Yeah.
It was characterful. I mean, at the low end, it was quite dead. A rickshaw would out-drag you at a stoplight, but it would immediately, like you said, that punch would come in and you'd sail past. So it had a lot of character. They looked great. I'm a sucker for looks and ride and handling. So I think those are two cars I really, really miss from back then.
Yeah. And so just the cars which you're happy to see gone or really didn't miss.
Okay, that's interesting, Hormazd. Yeah. Actually, I would put the... I'm being unfair here. I'd put the Omni there because it was a car I learned to drive on, and my dad had an Omni, and we used a lot, so it had its plus of space. But that was about it. I don't really miss it because it was quite terrible in the sense that to drive, to maintain, we would always be doing brake overhauls, drum brakes all around. The slave cylinders would always be leaking.
So high maintenance for a Maruti on that.
High maintenance for what was a Maruti, yes, at that time. The gear levers, it had multiple mechanism, sort of linkages to go there. That would always go. So, and pretty much a dud to drive. So, I really am happy to see that one gone.
Yeah.
Oh, what about you, Hormazd?
I think for me, it was that crop of Mahindras, which were really, to be honest, weird looking and ugly.
I know which one.
The Quanto and the Nuevo Sport.
Xylo?
Xylo too, but I think KUV 100, which was really very weird looking.
Right.
And, even the Quanto, I think one of them came with that Ricardo AMT and it was just awful. So they hadn't got the AMT right and it was just terrible to drive as well. And, really, I think that was a low phase for product development at that time. But, now it's a completely different story, as we know. Obviously, a lot of hits and misses in these 25 years. And I think another brand which we've all grown up was Fiat. Again, made some great cars. They had many chances. Right. I mean, it's amazing how when they went to the brink, one model would bring them back every time.
Sure.
I mean, then at twice you had the Uno, which, came and went. Then
Palio.
you had the Palio, and then you had the Linea.
Right, the Punto Linea.
Yeah, the Punto Linea. Linea was also great.
Fantastic. I had a Punto. I loved it.
Exactly. And they just messed it up
Right.
each time. So while we say that, Indian brands don't have competition, very often, I think a lot of these multinationals have just shot themselves in the foot with just, to be honest, some plain stupid decisions.
No, absolutely, Hormazd. You're bang on when you said stupid decisions, because it just boils down to that. And if you look at it, there are still companies that are unfortunately still, falling prey to that. Companies that are still here. Let's look at, let's say, Citroen, Honda. Citroen came in, read the market as, India is a cheap market, under-equip everything. It doesn't work. India's a value market, just a fundamental error. Same with Honda. I mean, just threw away their, advantage, because they did establish themselves here.
I think Honda, we've spoken about enough podcasts. I think Honda really, hopefully they'll get back. But I think Honda really, the way they threw away this market, it's really, really tragic. And again, Renault, started off with the Duster, the Kwid. Again, I think the most stupid decision they made, and, it was just absolutely inexplicable, was to kill the K9K diesel.
Right.
And still today they're talking, can it be revived? Of course, they've missed the bus. Very difficult now. But just something like that, it just kind of almost killed the company, because, the Duster was so critical. The Kwid, of course, did well, but again, they've not been able to invest in it. Of course, now Renault's looking at a rejuvenation with the new Duster. And I think, as we've said before, one thing people have realized now, what's different now and then is India is a market that's become very crucial. No one's going to exit this market at all. Very unlikely. They're just going to have their foot in here, maybe scale down. But I think everyone will continue with their presence here.
Yeah, and absolutely. Hormazd, add to that list Volkswagen as a group. I mean, they had Skoda in first, was doing well. Volkswagen came in, tried to move that brand above. Kind of both then lost their way.
Absolutely right. In fact, Skoda came at the start of this century.
Right.
And it's been here for 25 years. So really, Skoda's history is a quarter of a century, what we're talking about right now. And as you rightly said, I mean, when they came in, the Octavia, phenomenal product, very well priced, did very well. And, over time, they've kind of, again, getting out of diesel was a problem for them. But, I think they had to. They've never recovered from that. And clearly, again, their product offerings are quite minimal. They're not in every segment of the market, not serving the complete breadth of customers. So again, definitely at a disadvantage. And I think what we got to talk about is the rise of the Koreans, which is, really, I think one thing we've seen in these 25 years, starting with Hyundai. They were already a force to reckon with as we started the century. Now, of course, they are huge, again, under pressure. But we've seen Kia come in as well. So really, as a group, the Koreans have really understood this market and have become a hugely dominant force.
No, absolutely, Hormazd. Kia, you mentioned a perfect brand to illustrate an example of getting an entry right. And I think we've had few examples of that in the last 25 years. In fact, if I look at, let's say, MG, really superb entry into the market. We've had also now VinFast just about coming in. Tesla, okay, it's come in, but at a very lukewarm kind of entry. But I think we've seen brands coming in. Yes, of course, led by EVs like VinFast and Tesla. But let's look at MG. Smart decision to come in with the Hector.
Yeah.
We've spoken about this in past podcasts where they were thinking of hatchbacks and things like that. Cheap, model. Thankfully didn't do that, which is what, let's say, Citroen did. And really pushed them really well. Now, unfortunately, the Hector itself isn't doing that well. It's kind of, I think, fallen prey to just a slow life cycle in terms of updates and things like that.
I think it's even focused. They're not focused on it the way they should be. Yeah, but I think clearly, as you said, it needs that update. And I think the fuel efficiency is an issue, and you've got more competition. And I think that's, I think competition is relentless. People have to keep refreshing their products. You can't do the 3+3 cycle anymore. It's got to be a lot more frequent.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think, yes, looking at the last 25 years, we've lost some brands, but we've gained some too. So that's refreshing to know. The car market is growing. So, Hormazd, before we wind up, to end with, I know everyone does a 5-year plan. let's try and end with a 25-year plan. What do you think the next 25 years will look like now in terms of the Indian auto industry, at least the brands present, fuel choices and things like that?
Well, one thing's for sure, I don't think the ICE is going to die. It'll still continue in some form. I think there will be some global fight back to it, because I think it's going to be impossible to, have everything electrified. And why I'm saying this is that after 25, 30 years, we still don't have a proper CNG network.
Right.
After 25 years of wanting to do this, you still have to queue up for it. Though CNG penetration has increased dramatically.
Right.
But, the limitation is a lot to do with the distribution. I think with let's say EVs, it's going to be even tougher, I think, to kind of foresee or imagine a situation where, everything is, all pumps are kind of replaced with EV charging. I think that's, quite difficult. But, who knows? There could be some breakthroughs. I, for one, think, EVs is the way. But I think, we'll still see some level of combustion still. I think we will be last man standing. And I think for 25 years, I still think we'll have some form of ICE, maybe as a hybrid, but it'll still be here.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Hormazd. In any case, I think we are safe to put out projections like this, because in 25 years, I don't know whether we'll be around or not. To be ahead to this.
Yeah, to know whether we were right or wrong. Yeah, but it's a great crystal gazing. But more than that, it was great looking back, actually. Just think about it, 25 years, a quarter of a century of this century. It is a bit of a landmark, and that's the way we looked at it. And I hope you enjoyed us taking you down memory lane and just, our take on how the auto industry has completely transformed and how some things have remarkably stayed the same. Well, that's it from me, from Deep Drive and from Sergius. Do keep watching. Do tune in every Saturday at 11 a.m. when this podcast drops. And to make sure that you don't forget, do stay notified. And you can also catch us on our other podcast platforms, Apple Podcast and Spotify. Thanks for watching. See you again, same time next week.